So I just got done recording the latest episode of the Ultimate Bias podcast with Dana and Dre. Shout out to them. Lovely as always to be on the podcast with them. I've been on this podcast 3 times, which is it's genuinely so flattering that they keep wanting me back to talk about marketing level stuff. We first talked about the Cat's Eye documentary. We then talked about Minhee Jin, and tonight we talked about the market insight reports that have been leaked from Hybe, or as they've been dubbed, the Hybe papers. The episode should be out in a few days, and just coming off the back of it, I think that Dana and I worked really hard to sift through the falsehoods, sift through the misinformation, sift through people that are blowing things way out of proportion in this, and just get down to the nitty-gritty and the truth and talk about the significance of these papers, the significance of just generally market insight reports, how bog standard they are in the industry, what they can be used for, the good, the bad, all of that, and just deliver something that we hope is informative and helpful to people, rather than continuing to sow seeds of confusion, as a lot of people out there are. Genuinely, why I didn't immediately jump on talking about these papers was because I struggled to find the clarity with all that everyone was talking about myself. It took me a few days. My mental health has also been in the toilets. That didn't help either. When I finally got to a source that I thought was reliable, and I realized this must be what everyone's talking about, that everyone's is so agitated about, I was faced with a social listening report. Not that good of a one, I must admit. But a social listening report or a market insights report that I see all the time, that I know exists across every other industry, every other K-pop, Western music, every other industry that you can think of has something very, very similar. I've done social listening reports. I've had people do social listening reports for me. It's such standard practice in trying to understand your audience. And honestly, the company that listens versus the one that doesn't is the far better company, and the one far more likely to give audiences what they want by listening. I feel like people got uncomfortable with the fact that a company was listening to these specific things. And I think that should just be a lesson that if you put something out on the internet is free to everyone. You will always have a risk. You can post the most crack-headed delulu stuff, and there is always a chance that it is going to end up in a Hybe in a Hybe social listening report. None of us are safe, and that is because we as K-pop stans, we are guinea pigs. Not only that, we are the creme de la creme. We are the prize guinea pigs, you and I. And they need us really badly. They need us, and they need to understand us sooner rather than later. I didn't get to talk about this on the podcast because we ran out of time, but something that I have long been fascinated with, and that I know is a fascination of a lot of these companies, is something called the fan economy, which we as fandoms are all a part of, or the dream is that we become the fan economy for these companies. The fan economy is all about generating profit, masses of profit off of a fandom's love for a specific celebrity or an idol. Studying and then trying to push forward this idea of the fan economy in your own fandom of your group, it's never just about fan to idol. People talk a lot about the parasocial bond and the good, the bad, the ugly, and the repercussions of it. People don't often talk among themselves about the fan to fan relationship. And for a company, the fan to fan relationship is just as important, and sometimes more important, when you're trying to turn a profit off of that fandom, because the fandom is around the idol, and we know on a level that we cannot, it is parasocial. We cannot form a real connection to the idol. They are several steps apart from us. We orbit around them, but there's still several degrees of separation there. Not so much when we're fans. And there's a lot of sociological concepts that go into how we as fans, as part of a subcultural fandom, will change our behaviors to fit into our subcultural fandom. And we will act differently being in one fandom versus if we were in the other. We will perceive someone who might be exactly like us in appearance, in background, in nationality, in all of these things. But if they're in a different fandom to us, we will perceive them differently than ourselves. It goes so much into the way the human brain works. And companies latch onto, and they study and they understand this. I studied it. I studied that halfway through my career. I know this shit. And I know how it can be used for good and for bad. And the different levels of good and bad, it's not all just nefarious evil schemes of corporations. It can just be selling you a good product versus selling you a shit one that you don't want, and then the company doesn't make any money and they make no margin because they had a shit idea and they didn't listen to their audience. These insight papers from Hybe, the furore around it has been so messy, but at the crux of it, if it gets us to understand like how we are being watched as consumers and how we can take a certain power back in that I think is a really positive, important conversation that we keep having. I always try and look for the silver lining when it comes to these big scandals, because I think they can generate important conversations that we can keep going. Like I said, we are guinea pigs, but we are very prized guinea pigs. These companies cannot afford to fuck it up. Fans are sticky. In marketing, you talk about stickiness of fans or stickiness of consumers, which is how often they will latch onto and be loyal to a brand. As fans, we are very sticky because we can get very dedicated to our idol. But companies can and do, as we've seen, get complacent. They think that they can do anything and we will lap it up. And that's not reality. And again, going back to more sociological ideas, our identity shifts with the fandom that we're in. And a change happens on the individual level. So if you think that you can't affect change, you can, because then it ripples out to other people and then you have a change and then the company notices it. Yeah, the company takes notice of toxic fans. They note that down. They take notice of fans that are saying things that are a bit more progressive about, we don't care if idols are short. We don't care if they show skin. We don't care if they're in relationships. The more that we talk about those things and the more we normalize them and talk about them and make sure that it's really loud and clear that we want those things and we accept those things, that's how the company realizes that it's more profitable to go with what we want than the traditional way that they have always done things. Because they will come to a point where they will understand the traditional things that people used to enjoy, they don't enjoy anymore. Particularly pushing to an international audience that thinks differently to the domestic. It's not sustainable to do the one size fits all approach. It's just not. And we got to talk about it because they're clearly listening. If they listen, we can be heard. So yeah, just some thoughts, food for thought from one guinea pig to another. Hope it helps.